Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2022 Senate and governor elections, but from the perspective of a red wave. Last video, it was more of a blue wave scenario. It was what was the Democratic Party's best, realistic map in both the Senate and the governor's races. So today we're doing the inverse of that, which is the best case scenario for the Republicans or the worst case scenario for the Democrats, depending on how you view it. So let's just get right into it here. Again, these are not my actual predictions. This is just the best case scenario for the Republicans. And I do want to clarify, in a best case scenario, technically you'd have states like California being red, but the thing is that's too unlikely. It frankly, there's like no chance of it happening anyways. So this is, as I said last video, anything that has a greater than 10% chance of going red will go red in this video. So let's get started here. So there are still states that will be safe for the Democratic Party. California, Hawaii, Maryland, New York, and Vermont would all be safe for the Democrats in this scenario. For the Republicans, they'd have all their normal safe states. See Alaska, but they'd probably want Chewbacca to win over Murkowski. You'd have all these states, the Iowa with Grassley would win by more than 15. Missouri, obviously. Ohio with Vance. Vance would probably win by 15 or 16 in the best case scenario for him. South Carolina, Alabama, Florida, Rubio would win by maybe 15, 16 in the best case scenario because, again, he won by 9 in 2016. So, again, if Florida's trending right, if Hispanics keep turning out for Republicans, he could double that hypothetically in a best case scenario. And yeah, that's about it. So that's our beginning Senate map here. Again, Republicans already out to 47 Senate seats here. And now for our likely Democratic states, Oregon, Washington would be up. Although I will say Washington would be a bit closer because, again, Tiffany Smiley or Patty Murray is a weaker incumbent than Ron Wyden. Wyden won by like 30 points in 2016. He ran like 20 points ahead of Hillary Clinton. And so at worst, he would win by like 10 or 11. And then for Patty Murray at worst, she'd win by 5 or 6. So it would be a bit closer, but they would still be Democratic holds. And then Illinois, it would kind of be a repeat of 2016 where I think Tammy Duckworth beat Mark Kirk by like 10, I want to say. Well, it was actually closer to 15, but what I will say is that Duckworth, for her, it would probably be like another 10-point margin of victory in a best case scenario for the Republicans against Duckworth because it would be a combination of Chicago turnout dropping, suburbs getting a little redder, and then these, like Duckworth did fairly well in downstate for a Democrat, and it would just be a ton of downstate keeping the trend to the right. So Illinois still wouldn't flip, but it would be a little closer. Connecticut, that's another one. Connecticut is a state that won't flip, but has the potential to be a bit closer in a best case scenario for the Republicans. Although, again, Leora Levy is a really bad candidate, and she'll probably lose by 20 in actuality. So, likely Republican states. Again, I think Nevada would be the first up to be a likely Republican state. This isn't to say that I think Laxalt has like a greater chance of winning than Cortez Masto, but I think at best he'd win by 5, maybe 5.5, 6%. Again, Nevada, like the thing with Nevada is that Democrats will generally win by a couple, by very narrow margins. But the thing is, Republicans have a bit more upside because there's always a higher chance Democratic turnout and like Vegas just collapses, and that if that happened, you'd have a big red wave in Nevada, and so that's Laxalt's best case scenario. Though again, I want to reiterate, I don't think he'll win by anything close to 5 or 6% if he does even win. North Carolina's up next. North Carolina, at best, Ted Budd probably win by 8 or 9%. Again, this would really just be a combination of black turnout dropping and Budd doing a lot better than Trump in the suburbs, and it's possible, but I don't think it's very likely to happen. And again, you'll note that in my best case scenario, I had Sherry Beasley winning by I think 3%, and I think worst case she loses by 8 or 9. Wisconsin's another one. Wisconsin I originally had as likely Republican, but we'll see if it stays there after in my newest Senate prediction, which will come out I think in 4 or 5 days. But anyways, the thing with Wisconsin is that there is a lot of Republican upside here, and I think at best Ron John could win by 7 or 8%. Again, this is a state where the Democrats rely heavily on turnout for Madison, Milwaukee to get close to winning or to win. And if that drops off, and if Ron John did really well in the suburbs, he could easily win by 6 or 7%. And yeah, I think that's it. So again, Republicans already at 50 seats here. They just need one of these last seats, and I think I'll say Colorado is lean Democratic in this scenario. It would be about a maybe 2, 3, 4 point win for Joe or for Michael Bennett. Joe O'Dea is a good candidate for the Republicans. Don't get me wrong; like he's a strong recruit and he'll make it closer than it would have otherwise been. But I mean, realistically, Colorado is a super blue state nowadays. It's trending to the left. The turnout patterns there really help the Democratic Party. And also, the thing you have to remember is that Michael Bennett won in 2010 in a red wave. He won in 2016, which was a more neutral year. And so, even if you crank, this to 2010 levels of red wave, if they couldn't knock off Bennett in 2010, really hard for them to do it now. So it's Colorado. And then, yeah, that's it for our lean Democratic states, lean Republican states. There would be quite a few here. We'd start with Arizona. Arizona is a state where I think Blake Masters at best would win by 4 or 5%. Again, this would be what would happen would be Hispanic turnout would collapse. He'd get a ton of reversion in Maricopa County suburbs and would just keep up strong with the rural areas. And again, Kelly's, I think, favored to win right now, but Blake Masters certainly has a chance. And I think, in the best case scenario, he would win by 4 or 5%. Georgia's up next. Georgia, I think it's harder for the Republicans because they have to for them to win this race, they have to get 50% of the vote on election day. And the thing is, I don't think that Herschel Walker really has a realistic path to that. So in a best case scenario, he'd maybe win he either win narrowly in a runoff, but I guess in an absolute best case scenario, he'd get 50.5% of the vote and beat Warnock by 2.5 or 3%. Again, that would seem pretty cautious because you'd think, oh well, in the best case scenario, he'd just match Kemp. But the thing is, Walker's just so bad of a candidate, even in the best case scenario. Even if Kemp won by 10, he'd still probably win by only 4 or 5%. So I guess that's his best case scenario: 3, 4, 5% margin of victory for Herschel Walker. And then next up, Pennsylvania again. It's actually funny because I had Pennsylvania and unironically my prediction is lean Republican until about a month and a half ago, and so now it's the best case. It's funny because now my prediction 7 or 8 weeks ago was now the best case scenario for Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. It just goes to show how bad of a campaign he's been running as of late and how much the tides really turned against the GOP. And so, yeah, I think that Dr. Oz best case wins by 4 or 5. It would mostly, again, be Philadelphia turnout just collapsing and doing a lot better than expected in the suburbs and then holding on to Trump numbers in rural and working class areas. And that gets you to about a 4.5-point victory, if my math is correct. But yeah, Dr. Oz, I don't think is favored to win at this point. But if he did win, best case scenario, win by 4 or 5. So lastly, New Hampshire. New Hampshire is really close, but I think just to give the GOP the benefit of the doubt, I would say they would narrowly take it. Again, with Chris Sununu, they probably would have won it easily, but they're probably going to run Don Bolduc, who is a bad candidate, who Chris Sununu has literally thrown under the bus, even though he's a member of his own party. And yeah, not too great for Republicans in New Hampshire, but again, they did win a Senate seat here by 20 points in 2010. They've done well here in the past, and so I think there's a path for the Republicans to narrowly eke out a win in New Hampshire, but it would take a lot, and it's why it's a best case scenario. So that being said, let's go over to our governor's map here, and let's talk about this map. So Democratic Party, they would win California, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, safe, and that would really be it, honestly. For the Republicans, they would win they'd win all of these states by a safe margin. Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, South Carolina, Florida with DeSantis. Well, no, DeSantis wouldn't win by 15 even in best case scenario. All of these states, and yeah, that the Republicans already will be at 24 seats here. And by the way, Kansas does have an incumbent Democratic governor, but if the red wave got massive, I could easily see her losing by 15 points. It would just be kind of every Trump voter. Because the thing with Kelly is that the best argument to make for her losing by 15 points wouldn't be that she's unpopular. It's that people don't mind her, but they're going to vote Republican because they prefer the Republican. So, yeah, Kansas, Laura Kelly. It'll be much closer in reality, but she has the potential to lose by 15 or 16 points if things get really bad for the Democrats here. So, yeah, that's it. Now, for our likely Democratic states, I think you would start probably with Colorado. Jared Polis is really popular. He's, going to win a lot of Republican votes this time. He'll probably win by, I think, 15. But yeah, at worst, he'd probably win by 6 or 7, running a few points ahead of Michael Bennett in this scenario. And yeah, I think it's not really likely, but he would come within 7 points of losing in a best case scenario because in 2018 he won by 11. So yeah. Illinois would be up next. J.B. Pritzker is a fine incumbent. He's not amazing, and so he would have the potential to run behind Tammy Duckworth in this scenario, but it still wouldn't be particularly close. Oh, New York should be safe. And then yeah, that's it for the Democrats. For the Republicans, Start off as a spicy take here. Oregon's interesting because there's the potential to be a lot of vote splitting in the state of Oregon. So, first of all, let's talk about the candidates here. So, there's Betsy Johnson for the independents, which again is going to likely hurt the Democrats more than it will hurt the Republicans because again, she was a Democrat when she was in the state Senate, so she'll take away some votes from Tina Kodak. Then who's the Democrat, and then you'll have Christine Drawson, who I think is the minority leader of the Republicans in the Oregon House. So this is a scenario in which like Betsy Johnson does better than expected, draws on, or I think it draws in or draws on, I don't know, but draws on would do really well, and that would result in it like maybe like a 7-point victory, where it would be something like 48% to 41%, and then the remaining like 11% would go to Betsy Johnson. Or you could also see a scenario where Betsy Johnson gets 20% of the vote, and then Drawson gets 45%. Kotek would get like 35%. Then you'd have Betsy Johnson getting like 20% of the vote. So there are a lot of weird scenarios that could happen in Oregon, but I think at best the Republicans would win by 7 or 8% just because of vote splitting. Although in actuality, if this were a two-way race, the best case scenario for the Oregon Republicans would be probably like winning by a point. But Betsy Johnson going to hurt the Democrats a lot in this race. Nevada's another one. Nevada's a state where I think the Republican Party has not a rated chance here because Joe Lombardo is a good recruit for the Republicans. He has the potential to do really well in Clark County, and in the best case scenario, he'd probably win by 6 or 7 against Steve Sisolak. I don't know if I should put New Mexico. I mean, New Mexico, like, I guess there's like a very small chance New Mexico would get really bad for the Democratic Party because, again, what you would see is Hispanic turnout totally falling, turnout from urban areas like Santa Fe and Albuquerque just being really bad, and then a ton of Hispanic trending towards Republicans, and then also white voters coming out because they hate Michelle Lujan Grisham. So it's a lot of things to happen, but in the best case, it would happen. So yeah, I could see Mexico being a 5-6 point margin of victory for Mark Ronchetti. Wisconsin's a state where the Republicans have a lot of upside. Like I said, I think Rajon has the ability to win by 7 or 8. Similar thing for Tim Michels. Tony Evers is a fine incumbent. He's not super popular, and he's in a state that voted 3% to the right of the nation in 2020. It'll be hard for him to win re-election to begin with, I think, at best for Tim Michels, or Michael, however you pronounce it. I think it's Michels, but Tim Michels, I think, at best would win by 7 or 8%, similar to Ron Johnson. Florida, Georgia up next. Georgia, like I said earlier, Herschel Walker would probably win by 4 in the best case scenario. In that same scenario, Brian Kemp win by 10 over Stacey Abrams again. We've seen polls with actually running 10 points behind Raphael Warnock, and if that were to happen, you could see a scenario in which Warnock would lose, and then she would maybe lose by even 11 or 12. So again, not super likely, but it's a possibility. So I think at best we get a narrow double-digit victory for the Republicans in Georgia, mostly out of just doing insanely well in the suburbs. So same with Florida. Not too much to say there. I think it would be close to 15, but at best DeSantis probably wins by 13 or 14 over Charlie Crist. Then I think, I think that's it. Let's go to our lean Democratic states here, which I don't. Oh yeah, Rhode Island will be lean D in the best case scenario. Not too much to say there, but yeah. And yeah, that would be it. Lean Republican. Arizona is the first one. Arizona is a state where the Republican Party has the potential to do very well, but I think they blew it with Katie or Kim. Jeez, I cannot talk. Carrie Lake. And had they run Karen Taylor Robeson or had they run Kimberly Yee, they would have done a lot better, really, because those candidates, whether you like them or not, have a lot more appeal to the suburbs, have a lot more appeal to voters that voted for Mitt Romney in 2012 and voted for Biden in 2020. Because ultimately, Trump only lost Arizona by 10,000 votes, and had he just been a little less, I think, polarizing to a lot of suburban voters, he could have won the state. So Robeson would have done that. She probably would have beat Hobbs by a couple points. But Carrie Lake, bad candidate, so she kind of takes out that ceiling that Robeson would have had. And I think, yeah, at best first, she wins by 4 or 5%. Now, next up would be Minnesota. Not really because I think the Republicans have a real chance of winning it outright, but there's a Weed Party candidate here who, in the best case for the Republicans, would take away like 5-6% of the vote from Tim Walz. You get like a 48 to 47 or like 48 to 46 or 45% scenario where the Republicans would win just because of vote splitting between the Democrats and the Weed Party candidate. So again, in the best case, that's what would happen for the Republicans. Then in Pennsylvania, Doug Mastriano, while I think he's unlikely to win, has the potential to win by maybe 3 in a best case scenario. Again, it would mostly just be turnout collapsing in Democratic areas and him doing really well with the working class and with rural voters. And yeah, and then finally Maine. Maine would be another one. Maine would, I think, vote for Paul LePage by 4% in a best case scenario for him. Dobbs takes a lot of the cap off of, like, Dobbs kind of caps how well Republicans can do in the suburbs. And in a state like Maine, this is a very pro-choice state, it does kind of put a limit on the potential of ticket splitting for Democrats to cross over and vote for Paul LePage. But at the end of the day, he's won statewide before. He can do it again in the best case scenario, absolutely. So remaining two are going to be really close. I think I'll split them. Michigan would narrowly vote for Tudor Dixon in the best case scenario. I think she's unlikely to beat Gretchen Whitmer, but ultimately Whitmer is, she's a really good incumbent. So it would happen, like, you'd have to have a really bad Republican turnout. You'd have to have a lot of Democrats crossing over and voting for Tudor Dixon, and then getting some level of aversion in the suburbs. So very unlikely to happen. I really think Dixon's going to lose, but Michigan did vote for Trump in 2016, and so I guess it's theoretically possible for her to win by like 0.1% or something like that. And then finally, Connecticut. I think Connecticut would still narrowly re-elect Ned Lamont over Bob Stefanowski. Stefanowski is a fine candidate. He ran in 2018. He came within 4% of beating Ned Lamont in 2018, which was a blue wave. So I guess you could make the argument that if he holds on to all his 2018 voters, he could win. But again, not likely to happen. Lamont is a lot more popular now. Connecticut is, I think, more friendly to Democrats now than it was 4 years ago. And so ultimately, I do expect the Democrats to hold on to it in almost every scenario. So yeah, that's my prediction. No, not prediction, but my best case scenario map for the Republicans. They win 35 out of the 50 governor seats here, and it would just be a really good result for them if this were to happen. Now, that being said, not my actual prediction, but yeah. So thanks for watching. I'll go back to the Senate map here, but thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments, if you think the Republicans will win any more seats or win any less seats that I didn't have in this video, comment that down below. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.